Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA D10 Nano project, more specifically this time the Nintendo 64 core, because about 2 months ago I did a video showcasing the games that were not going to be working on the core as it was released. There were some titles that had freezing issues, and we are revisiting that now because what we found with testing on the Turbo core is that some of those games can definitely be moved into the playable and completable category. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But one of the leading disappointments for people when the core development finished was the fact that Resident Evil 2 was not on the playable category. This has the propensity to freeze in the standard issue core, not the turbo core, so we definitely checked in on that. And even on the turbo core, there definitely seemed to be a little bit of an issue, but when we finally got the final revision of the turbo core, we've done extensive testing. I've played through Leon's campaign the entire way. I've talked to other people, and I have been able to beat this game from start to finish without a single freeze on the turbo core. And that is definitely awesome because there's a lot to love about the Nintendo 64 version of Resident Evil 2. In the previous video I did say at least we have it on PlayStation 1 and that would be my preferred way to play, but as I played this game more on Nintendo 64 for testing, I've really grown to love what this version does and definitely enjoyed my playthrough on Nintendo 64. And like I said, on the Turbo core I have checked with multiple people that have been able to play this game from start to finish without any freezing whatsoever, and everything I say on this video, I've had multiple different people check that I trust who can send me save files and show me footage confirming that this game is 100%, at least on the Leon side of things. I'm sure we'll know more about Claire in the future. I'll definitely try to get a playthrough in that going, at least to give you guys information. But that's the great thing about the Turbo core, it seems to be fixing problems in some games that have consistent freezing issues over on the standard core side of things, and it doesn't really change anything else in the gameplay. It's the Resident Evil 2 you know, love, and remember, just running at a higher clock speed, and that seems to really take out the freezing. Now, of course, this is not a scientific test. I have a few people that test with me, and we were all able to get the same result, and that's what other people have had as well. That doesn't mean that you're not going to see 1 to 2 random freezes, because nothing is going to be 100% consistent across the board in everyone's experience. Just save early, save often, and if you do encounter a freeze, just reload, and it's as likely that you're going to get over the area that froze as you're not, because any sort of freezing in this game that other people have reported happens completely at random. There is nothing consistent about it, so play Resident Evil 2 today on the Turbo core and you should be fine. Now moving over to another game that had a freezing issue is Wonder Project J2. Now this is definitely a very particular game on Nintendo 64 where the people that love it absolutely love it. The people that aren't that interested in it just really aren't that interested in it. But it's a very unique game on the Nintendo 64 with a lot of fun visuals and a pure 2D aesthetic when you actually get into the game. Now what was happening on the standard core is within a shop a certain thing would cause the core to freeze. It was consistent that it would hard lock the game. The nice thing is people have retested this since I did my previous video on the Turbo core, and the shop does not freeze at that moment in time. That is the only freeze that anyone ever found in this game. And I have heard a few people basically quote-unquote beat this game because it's not like a huge beat condition, and they have had no issues whatsoever playing Wonder Project J2 from start to finish on the Turbo core without any freezing whatsoever. So this one's definitely getting promoted into the playable category. Unless there's some other random happenstance in the game that no one's checked yet that can cause a freeze, no one can seem to get it to freeze at the spot that it used to before. And that's an awesome thing because this game is just filled with charm and flair. It's such a unique experience, and if you've never played it before, definitely check it out. There is a lot to love here, and it's a lot slower of a methodical experience for the Nintendo 64 than the games that we're used to playing are. And the great thing is with the Turbo core, you don't have to worry about that shot freeze anymore. It goes right past it with no issues whatsoever. Now moving on to another game that I think is one of the Nintendo 64 best, it's Gauntlet Legends, and this was another game that went through multiple revisions as the core was in active development. It would freeze a lot and run very slowly, then it would run a little bit faster but continue to freeze until we got to the final version of the standard core where the game would run as it was expected to. But you could definitely get random intermittent freezing here and there, and this is a video from the previous core that would freeze on the stock. But what we found is if you move over to the Turbo core, this game is not freezing. I played through about half of it, Andy D's played through about the first 4 levels, and I've talked to 3 other viewers of the channel and 2 people on Discord that have all beaten this game without a single freeze whatsoever. And the best part is on the turbo core, you get that increased frame rate, which Gauntlet Legends definitely benefits from. This game had the tendency to chug on a real Nintendo 64 console, and here in the turbo core, not only is it not freezing and has become playable, it's a much faster, better version of the game because of that overclock. Yes, this is not one-to-one with real hardware because real hardware would never run this fast, but this is another game that's getting promoted to the working list as of this video. And just be aware when I say the working list, this is just the list I'm giving you in these videos. I'm not talking about the spreadsheet that is kept over on the MiSTer FPGA Discord server. That has not been updated yet. These are my personal opinions. Having tested and had other multiple people I trust test, I am moving these over to the playable category because, again, in all of my experience with Gauntlet Legends on the turbo core, this game has done nothing but run better than real hardware, and I have not seen a single freeze whatsoever. Andy D helped me capture some footage. He has not seen it freeze either. It's just one of those things. The turbo core, that upclocking seems to get rid of some of the random freezes in some of the games. Now, unfortunately, not every single game is fixed. And when we get later into the video, you're going to see a few titles that still, unfortunately, I wouldn't classify as playable. But the fact that we're already 3 games up from where we were the last time we ran a video like this is super impressive. And I did not check anything like the Mahjong titles. Honestly, I'm not knocking them, just not something that I wanted to include in the video. Now moving over to a game that honestly I'm not interested at all in, but some people really do seem to love, is Iggy's Wrecking Balls. When we talked about this game, I said it was rock solid stable until you get to a certain point in the 9th stage, and then it would consistently freeze when it was loading into a particular level. And I'm really not sure what to ever make of Iggy's Wrecking Balls. I totally understand the concept of it, but if there was ever a Nintendo 64 game that felt like it should have been an iOS game, even though iOS didn't exist back then, Iggy's Wrecking Balls definitely feels like that. It's a small casual game, and if you love it, the good news is with the turbo core, that consistent freezing when it loads into a specific area is 100% completely gone. People have played to the end of Iggy's Wrecking Balls. Everything is rock solid stable on the turbo core. And do be aware, as of the recording of this video, and probably permanently, the turbo core is still manual install only. You need to go to the MiSTer FPGA Discord server, go under the test build channels, and grab the core and put it in the consoles folder on your SD card. It's just because of the fact that there's only really one way to have one core in the repo on Update All, and obviously that's the stock core, not the turbo core. Now moving over to Conker, I'm sure you guys all watched my Conker's Bad Fur Day test where I went through the October 2000 prototype of the game, the decrypted ROM with the debug options enabled, and I showed you guys it was a very playable experience. I am almost to the end of Conker as the recording of this video. I probably got like 15% more of the game to go, and I've had a total of 6 crashes since I started playing that. Now obviously we'd love to have a 0 crash situation. I'm still looking into those debug menus and what those errors are out as far as the heat running out of memory. Definitely seems to be a memory addressing issue, but I'm saying again, the Conker's Bad Fur Day, if you use the October 2000 prototype of the game, is definitely a playable experience. I have no reason to believe I'm not going to be able to see the credits scroll. I just had a very busy few weeks because it is spring, so honestly I just haven't been able to sit down and play the game, but I've sent this over to a lot of other people to test, and they've had the exact same result that I have had. Granted, this is on either a 2.9V or a 3.0 RAM module, even though that shouldn't affect much. I'm just giving you the specs of everyone I'm having testing. But honestly, Conker's Bad Fur Day, I am putting in the playable category. It's not perfect, there is an asterisk on the actual statement, but you're going to be able to play Conker's Bad Fur Day on the core, the turbo core specifically, if you choose that October 2000 prototype and just play it as normal. Just make sure you have autosaving turned on. When you bring up the heads up display on the core, it'll save your game. That way if you do freeze, all you do is reload it, and you've lost maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes of gameplay, and you just get to replay that segment again, and it will definitely not crash in the same spot. The best I did was about 2 hours and 40 minutes worth of playing Conker, with seeing absolutely 0 crashes on the prototype version of the game. And again, this prototype is basically like 99% the exact same thing as the final game. There's a few text box differences and a few cutscene differences, but otherwise it is Conker's Bad Fur Day, as you know, love, and remember. So now I can definitely safely say you might have a crash here or there, but it's not going to affect the playability of the game, and it's not going to affect your ability to actually finish the game. So go ahead, start a Conker playthrough. Just make sure you use that October 2000 version of the game, rename it from .rom to .z64, and you will be playing Conker's Bad Fur Day on the core. And I'm still looking into the bug, so freezes like this hopefully will never happen in the future if I can figure it out. And I know everyone is going to ask if you haven't watched a video recently, Jet Force Gemini is just 100% a no-go. You can't get very far into the game, it'll freeze either going from the menu to the game, or you might get into the game for 10, 15, 20 seconds and then it's going to hard lock from there. There's no working around this at this point in time. This is definitely not playable whatsoever. You can't even kind of try to like save scum this to try to get further into the game and play around or reload saves after the freeze. This thing is just a 100% no-go, which is a bummer. It's a fun game, but it's definitely not my favorite one. But tell me, so far of all the games you've seen on this video, what is your favorite game showcased, and is it running or not? I would be curious to see what everyone wants to play on the core. Now, a couple other games that are still seeing freezing, and I have confirmed Battle for Naboo. It wants to run perfectly fine and solidly, but it does freeze at the same spot consistently. So unfortunately, this is not one that you're going to be able to complete on the core. And again, I know people really love Star Wars, but honestly, the best Star Wars games are playable on the core. This one's definitely not my favorite of anything that came out Star Wars-wise on Nintendo 64, so this one doesn't bum me out all that much. Obviously, we always wanted 100% of all of the games playable, but the fact that FPGAZumSpass got this far into the development before running into a problem was absolutely mind-blowing in and of itself. So if you want to play Battle for Naboo, you can definitely check it out on the turbo core, on the stock core, but unfortunately I tried to get by that freezing area twice and it froze in the exact same spot the exact same way. So this is one that just isn't going to be able to be promoted to that playable list, and that's a little bit of a bummer because clean HDMI out the 480p frame buffer mode makes this game look so much better than real hardware. But if you want to play this, software emulation or real hardware is going to be the way you want to do it, because on MiSTer FPGA it just isn't a game that you can see to completion. But it is what it is and we're happy with what we get. Now moving over to Playable Snowcross, this is another game that would freeze, and as I've done testing on the turbo core, this is a very weird one. I'm not moving it over to the playable list because I was able to get the core to freeze twice in like 25 minutes, but I have no idea why. Sometimes I can complete a race and nothing happens whatsoever. Other times I start the exact same race and it will freeze in the first lap or second lap. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason as to why this happens, but honestly, in a racing game where all you're trying to do is complete 3 laps, getting a freeze basically sets you back to the beginning, so that's why I'm not putting it on the playable category. But you can jump into this game, you can complete a race 2, 3, 4 in a row, and then something random will happen. And that's the hard part about these things. They're just not really predictable. You're never sure what you're going to get on something like Playable Snowcross compared to something like Battle for Naboo. You can basically freeze it at the exact same spot, the exact same time. So Playable Snowcross is doing the same thing as Conquer is, which is to say freezing at random with no reason why. Sometimes you'll load into a race and Playable Snowcross, you'll get through all 3 laps, you'll get out cleanly and you can move on. Next time if you load into that exact same race with the exact same character, you might freeze on lap 1, 2, or 3. But the good thing is all the best Nintendo 64 racing games work on the core, so if we had to lose one racing game, Playable Snowcross is definitely what I would nominate. But the good thing is 4 games have gone from the unplayable category to the playable category in my opinion. I've had multiple people check my work, multiple people I trust, and we've all found basically the same thing. So this core keeps giving even if it's not under active development. If you have any questions or comments about the turbo core or how to make this work, leave me a comment down below. But again, you should be playing this core. It is a 10 out of 10 and I love it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.